So again, thanks for joining us today on our webinar in which we'll be focusing on the topic of optimizing SAP data integration into Microsoft Fabric OneLake. We'll get started with some quick introductions. I also do want to point out that if there are any questions you have along the way, please go ahead and enter them into the Q&A section, and we'll get to those either during the presentation as we can. If not, we'll get to them at the very end if there are any open questions that we don't cover during the presentation. So my name is Tyler Reynolds. I am sales director here with Theobald Software. I've been with Theobald for almost 7 years now, and have been focused on the customer onboarding and customer facing side here in the US and North America, South America markets. Today I'll be joined by our Chief Product Officer, Christoph Schuler.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this webinar. I'm excited to be here with Tyler to talk about our integration with Microsoft Fabric OneLake.
Great. And together we will talk to you about our solutions, our integrations for Microsoft Fabric OneLake today. Quick agenda run through here. So we'll do a quick introduction about Theobald Software. If you are not familiar with Theobald Software and who we are, we'll just do a brief introduction to get you a little bit familiar about what we do. And then we'll dive right into the topic of Microsoft Fabric OneLake, and then into our solutions and how we can do that integration, including a product demo. And again, as I mentioned, if there are any questions along the way, please feel free to type those up in the Q&A section, or at the very end, we will open it up for questions as well. Okay, so again, just to get you an idea of who we are at Theobald Software, if you're not already familiar with us, we have been in the SAP integration market for 20 years now, since 2004. And in that time, we have really focused on helping organizations access their SAP data and bring that into environments outside of SAP. Usually this is for the purpose of landing that data into some sort of centralized storage, whether it's on-prem in a data lake, data warehouse, or lake house now. Many times companies like to bring this data outside to utilize with tools that are outside of the SAP stack. And so this is what we really focus on. The way we do this is by making easy to use, powerful but lightweight applications, and that are easy to pick up and easy to use by our customers. Some of the things we don't do are SAP consulting or services. We're really focused on delivering these extraction products for SAP users. This slide will show a little bit about what we do, or how we try to focus our products, our solutions, and what we want to bring to our customers. And Christoph, as a CPO, do you want to maybe touch here on some of the more important features that are listed here, or when you're thinking about new products or enhancements, what are some of the more important things that come to your mind?
Yeah, I think the ones that often resonate with our customers are the first one, fast. It doesn't take a really long time for customers to get our solution to work. We're typically talking a few days in most cases. That enables customers to get up and running, connected to SAP, and see some results, meaning they can replicate the SAP data into the environment where they need it. So I think that's an important one. And that relates to the second point here, is that we're easy to use. It's a complete no-code environment, as you will see in the demo later today. And the last one I would highlight here is that we are on a certified foundation. So our products are certified for both SAP, ECC, and S/4HANA. And that provides reassurance to our customers that they can, use our solution, knowing that we have the SAP certification.
Yeah, and from my side, being more on the sales, customer facing side, that's a lot. It's very similar to some of the most common things I hear from the customers or clients we speak with. It's being able to have a solution that's performant but not complicated, needs to be easy to use and scalable, and being SAP certified is also a big deal for a lot of our customers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yeah, that overview hopefully gives you an idea a little bit about what we do at Theobald Software and the SAP integration solutions that we create. Christoph will talk more specifically into one of the solutions when we get into the demo and how it connects to OneLake. But really now let's jump kind of more into the other side in the target destination environment. And today we're here to talk about Microsoft Fabric. So at this point, Christoph, I'll hand the floor over to you, and you can explain to the audience why Fabric is important and why it's important for companies to have this solution for SAP integration into the Microsoft Fabric environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so with Fabric, Microsoft has really done a very nice job of integrating some of the most important analytics tools or workloads, as they call them, within one place. You actually see on this slide a screenshot. This is the homepage of Microsoft Fabric when you sign on. So this is a platform for all kinds of users, whether you're a data professional or whether you're a data scientist or a business user. You can find the tools that you need to work with your data all in one place, all within one SaaS experience. And the nice thing about this is Microsoft has done a good job of trying to integrate these different workloads, so you don't have to jump from one to the next. And a key aspect of this is also where data resides, and that's where OneLake comes into play. OneLake is the common data store underneath Microsoft Fabric. And so again, regardless if you work in a data warehousing area or in data engineering or in real-time analytics or Power BI, you always have access to the same data across your different workloads. Excuse me.
Okay, and I'll advance to...
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about OneLake. So at the top here on this slide, again, you see the different workloads, the different applications that data teams and data specialists typically use. And underneath that, you have the common data store, the single unified logical data lake for your organization. You can create different workspaces across your organization where you can share data with other people. And with our Xtract Universal solution, you have the ability to unlock your SAP data and move your SAP data directly into the OneLake storage. It's a lakehouse storage underneath Fabric. And so one of the advantages here is that you only have to extract the data once. You send it to OneLake, and then you can work across your organization, different departments, different personas, different workloads that we mentioned. You can work with the same data. So that avoids multiple extractions from SAP. You only do it once and then share the data with the rest of your organization.
Good. And so Christoph, so before Fabric and OneLake, would organizations on Azure, for example, would that mean instead of sending it to one centralized data lake, that they would then do the same data replications into separate storage areas for these different units and groups?
Yeah, you would probably have data in different places. Customers would use different services, maybe from Microsoft, maybe from other vendors, and you would always have to take care of making sure that all these different services and workloads have access to the data where they can access it, and that's not always in one place. So you had to make sure you replicate the data from one area to the next. And that's one of the great advantages that I see with OneLake. It is this one storage for all of your corporate data, including SAP data, and that is shared across departments and different workloads.
Okay, great. Yeah.
So that takes us to Xtract Universal, our solution to replicate data from your SAP applications into OneLake. I'll start at the top. You can think of Xtract Universal basically as an extract and load solution for your SAP data. And we work with a variety of systems. We work with everything from SAP ECC, older versions, to the latest versions of S/4HANA in different deployment modes. On-prem, private cloud, public cloud are supported. Also different releases of SAP BW. We work with SAP DataSphere, APO, BPC Concur, and so forth. This is an evolving list. We also have additional systems on the roadmap. And so we try to have broad coverage of your SAP landscape to make sure you can get to the data that you need.
Yeah, and Christoph, so for those customers, especially on S/4HANA, who might be utilizing ODP objects in their system, there is the SAP note out about how you can access that data through third-party applications and the restrictions of going over the RFC protocol. Can you maybe comment on that note and how it relates to our solutions here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that note is important, and we've received quite a few customer questions about that from partners alike. And you can see it in the graphic here on this slide. The ODP over RFC component is one of currently 10 other components that customers can use to access SAP data and replicate it. So we have alternative components that are not impacted by the SAP note. In particular, I want to highlight our table CDC, also the report component that are not impacted. And in addition, we're actually in the process of adding 2 more components this month for OData. So you customers will have, if they want to use ODP, they will have a choice to access ODP over OData, which is what the note recommends. And we also have a generic OData connector for things like SAP Public Cloud. So we feel that this gives customers a lot of alternatives and different options that are not impacted by this SAP note.
Good. And yeah, actually, while we're on the topic of the source solutions, there is a question in the chat, Christoph, if we plan to integrate with DBT.
DBT, not at the moment. That's not something we have on the roadmap currently, but I'm happy to follow up with you to understand a little bit better what you have in mind and talk to you about that. So I'll be happy to get back to you on that.
Great.
Yeah, so a few other things I want to highlight on this slide. So collectively, again, with all the different components we have, we enable both full and CDC replication capabilities. CDC is enabled in different ways, not just ODP, but also primarily our table CDC component plays a big role here. I will show you in the demo how easy it is to work with that component and get reliable table-based change data from SAP into your destination environment. When it comes to connections to your ERP system, whether it's ECC or S/4HANA, there is no additional SAP licensing required. Also, Xtract Universal sits on a technical foundation that is SAP certified. We already touched on that on the previous slide. And when it comes to sending the data into third-party environments, we're compatible with most common cloud, data, AI, and analytics platforms. The ones we're highlighting in this webinar from Microsoft is, of course, OneLake. But we can also send data directly into SQL Server, Azure Storage, Synapse, Power BI, and Report Server, as well as other solutions from third-party vendors, including Snowflake, AWS, Google Cloud, and many others.
Okay, and so Christoph, with all of the source systems we've mentioned that we are compatible with, whether it's S/4HANA, ECC, the BW systems, whether you're using one or a mix of those, all of those sources can be utilized to send data into OneLake.
That is absolutely correct. The source components or extractor components are completely independent from the destination or target environment. So like you said, Tyler, you can sort of mix and match. You can use any of these components to send data to any of the supported destinations.
Okay, great. All right. So I guess here we're ready to go ahead and get into the fun part and show this live and how it works in the Fabric environment.
Great, so I'll share my screen. And I will start with the Microsoft Fabric environment. So this is the main screen, the logon screen with the different workloads that we have mentioned. I have Power BI, I can work with databases, I can do some data engineering or data science work. And I also have these different workloads here on the left where I can easily switch between different areas or depending on the persona that I am. So I want to start my demo in the data engineering space. And what I have created here already is a lakehouse. So OneLake is based on a lakehouse architecture. The other thing actually that I want to show first is the concept of workspaces. So here you can have different workspaces which group together your work items. This could be a lakehouse, this could be a Power BI dashboard, this could be semantic models, notebooks. So you can collectively work on and share on these different things within the context of a workspace. And a workspace can be shared amongst different users. You see now I'm in the data engineering space. I'm in my SAP workspace. I have a section here at the top that's relatively new. It's still in preview, where I could also select some predefined tasks that would guide me through some tasks. You know, for instance, I could add some data processing tasks. I could do some basic analytics tasks and so forth. I'm going to leave this step out for now. I just really want to show you the concept of how can you bring data into OneLake. And for that, I'm going to jump into my SAP Lakehouse. That is within OneLake. Yeah, that is the foundation for my OneLake storage here. So if I click on this, you see at the very top level of my lakehouse, I have two folders, one for tables and one for files. And as we replicate data into OneLake, they will show up as files initially. You can group these into folders. So I have just named them by different SAP areas, finance, procurement, and sales. If I go into my finance folder, you see here I have all kinds of data sets already replicated from SAP as mostly Parquet files here into my SAP Lakehouse. Including these three here, I have some accounting data from SAP, customer data, and industry data. And so at this point, I'm going to switch to our Xtract Universal tool to show you how you can send data as shown here into OneLake. So with Xtract Universal, I have a different data extracts set up. I can also organize them into folders in my tool here. They don't have to match with what we just saw in OneLake. These are two different organizational structures. But you can see here in my accounting folder, I have three data extracts, one for SAP accounting, one for SAP customers, and one for SAP industry codes. Now, a data extract in Xtract Universal mainly consists of three things. There is a source connection that's shown in the third column. Then there's a type of data extract and a specific object. And then you have the destination. When you set up the source, you basically connect to an SAP system in a very similar way as you would in SAP GUI. I'll show you briefly how this would look, for instance, for an S4 type environment, an S4HANA environment. Provide the application server. There's different ways we support the connection, the authentication, username and password or SNC. We also have different RFC options in terms of the library that is being used. So that's usually step one in our tool. You connect to your SAP system of choice. And that can be a production or non-production or QA system. It doesn't really matter. There's no restriction. By the way, that's where we're also adding the OData type connectivity later this month. Step two then is to pick one or more objects, or you pick an object and then one or more sub-objects to create a data extract. In this case, I've created a customer extract, or here it's an accounting table extract. If I look what's underneath that, I can see I'm looking at table BSID. That's an accounting table which stores accounts receivables data. And I can select the fields from that table that I want to replicate. I could add more tables here. We do support joins in SAP before we extract the data. You can filter the data set by, let's say, document type or company code. So there's all kinds of different options. Now, in terms of the destination, you see here these three data extracts all have a Fabric OneLake destination. And I want to spend a little bit of time on how you configure that in our tool. So to configure a OneLake destination, you have to authenticate against OneLake. And we do that using a tenant ID and a client ID that is associated with your Microsoft Entra ID account. So that is required to authenticate against the OneLake service. And then within OneLake, you specify a folder path. Now you can copy that from your OneLake environment. You can see here, my data will land in the SAP Lakehouse and then in the finance folder. If I briefly switch back here, this is my SAP Lakehouse, and the data will be placed in my finance folder. And then you have another area of formatting options here related to the file that is being saved in OneLake. We support different file types, CSV, Parquet, and JSON. And then for Parquet, we also have different compatibility modes that you can select. So I'm going to go with just a Parquet file with Spark compatibility mode. And with that, I'm ready to send data directly into OneLake. I have a few more options here. What do I want to name the file? And also my column names, do I want to use the technical names or the code from SAP? Or do I also want to include the more descriptive text? That's a bit more user-friendly, but it's also a little bit more lengthy in terms of your column headers. But for now, I'm going to choose code and text. Okay, so now I basically have these three data extracts. I'm just going to execute one just to show you the idea. I can do this manually in the tool, or you can fully automate this using an HTTP command or our command line interface to automate this at a frequency of your choice. This will only take a few seconds. Again, Xtract Universal is an extract and load tool. We don't store the data. It's a direct pass-through from the source to the destination. And you can follow this here in the log. We also have the log available here. There's also an API if you want to monitor the progress of this. Is it still going? Is it successful? Was it not successful? And now if I go over here and do a refresh on this folder, I should see an updated file. I think I picked the customer data. Yeah, so 11:29, that's my local time here in Seattle. And you can also automate this, as mentioned, using any automation tool of your choice. So this is a push mechanism, meaning the process starts in Xtract Universal, and then we push the data into OneLake. And then what you can do in OneLake is to work with this data. You can either manually say, I want to load this to a table, or you could also automate this using a notebook, for instance. A notebook could be basically a Python script where you could say, every time the data is updated here in my Parquet file, load that into a corresponding Delta table. Yeah, so you see here with the icon, these are tables in Delta format. The native format for the OneLake Lakehouse. And I can click on one of these tables. Yeah, now I basically it just looks like a SQL Server table, and I can look at the data. I can also enable APIs or data access directly on these tables, so I can query it or work with the data in tools like Power BI. Yeah, and so that is the next thing I want to show you. You see here the button. I could create a semantic model for this data. I've already created one. If I go back to my initial workspace, you see here there is a semantic model called SAP Accounting. And basically, if I open this model, what this does is it allows you to specify the relationship between tables. So I have three tables from SAP. We saw we had an accounting table, we had a customer table, and an industry table. Okay, I'm going to do a refresh here. This seems to be taking a moment. Okay, so there is my relationship. This is my semantic model. Here's my SAP accounting table. You also see here, I have the technical names appended by the text or the more friendly names. That's a setting in our tool. Of course, here in the model, you could also go ahead and do additional renaming if that's not what you would like the end user to see. So I have three tables with their relationships. And now from here, I can either go directly into a new report. I could also, as a Power BI user, switch into the Power BI workload to consume this semantic model. I'm going to just show you quickly here how this would look. This is now basically the Power BI experience. I have my data here on the left and my report in the middle where I can see the visuals that I can create. If I want to see just my customer numbers with their OpenAR amounts, I can quickly do that, or create a pie chart where I can look at the same amounts, maybe by the customer country. Yeah, and so I would be able now to also save this report, create a dashboard, or share it with my colleagues. There's now an additional thing I want to briefly show you, and that relates to an enhancement that we're working on for Fabric OneLake, and that relates to the table CDC component. So with our table CDC component, it's this component here, I have the ability to initialize a table in SAP for change tracking. I've done this here already for a table, for my table KNA1, which is a customer table. It actually right now says not initialized, so I'm going to run this once. Let me actually change the destination real quick. Okay. And I'm going to run this once to initialize the customer delta. Yeah, so this goes very quick. It doesn't extract any data. It just initializes this table for delta extraction. Yeah, so now it says initialized. There was a log table created, which will now capture all the logs for my customer record changes in SAP. And what I'm now going to do, so I did this in my S4 system. I'll go to my S4 system and introduce a change. Okay, that would be a customer master record. And I'm just going to use a customer here. And I could use the main customer data, or I could say, I could change the name here, sports company. And I could also change the street name or anything. Really, as long as I make a change that is stored in table KNA1, the main customer table, it will be tracked as a change. Okay, so now I can go out of SAP GUI, and now I can rerun this data extract. I'm going to change the destination to Fabric OneLake. Actually, to show you the output here, I'm going to leave it here as HTTP CSV. I should now see one record that was identified as having changed. If I look at my output, this was the customer number. I changed the name to sports company. And at the very end, you get two additional fields that we add to the record. You get a timestamp of when the record was changed. This is the local SAP timestamp. And you get an operation indicator. U is for update. If a new record was created in that table, you would have seen an I here for insert, and D would be for delete. And so you could also send this data into OneLake. I'm going to switch back for a moment into my SAP workspace and into my lakehouse. You could also send this to OneLake, and you see here I have also persisted this data in a table. Now at the moment, this merging into an existing data set, let's say you have a main customer table and you want to merge the changes into the main customer table, you would have to do that through, let's say, a notebook, a script in a notebook, or some other data movement task. But with mirroring, that's a feature from Microsoft. With Fabric mirroring, that will be automated. And that's what we're working on at the moment. That's what we plan to release in early 2025, is full support for mirroring from SAP data. And with mirroring, you can continuously synchronize a data source, such as SAP, with your OneLake data store. And that's in particular helpful for CDC type information. So I can only replicate what has changed from SAP and then automatically merge that into an existing data set. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing here, and we'll go back to the presentation.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for that presentation, Christoph. So I hope that gave everybody a good idea on, why you would want in the first place to send the data, SAP data, directly into a Fabric OneLake. and how our solutions, specifically Xtract Universal, can help with that. And so just to recap, everything that you just saw today that Christoph showed during the demo is, on this slide, you can see release 1. All of that is available now. And then, as Christoph mentioned, we do plan on some updates in 2025. If you want to reiterate, Christoph, some of those changes that we planned for early this year, or some additions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really about support for mirroring, as mentioned, and that together with our table CDC functionality, I think is a great enhancement that will enable continuous replication of not the full data set, but small incremental data sets, basically all of your changes into OneLake. And that makes it more efficient and faster to make sure you have near real-time data in OneLake, and you can work with near real-time data without having to continuously replicate full data sets, which take a long time and also put a lot more load on your SAP environment.
Okay, great. And a lot of what Christoph had shown in the demo is available in a white paper. You can see preview on the right-hand side there. If you would like to read that white paper or just visit our website for more information or to contact us, please feel free to scan the QR code. Otherwise, I think we're to a point where we're ready to jump into some of the questions that have been asked. I know there's a few that have been asked throughout the presentation, so thanks for being patient, and thanks for asking the questions, and we'll go ahead and to jump into those now. If you do have questions, still feel free to keep adding those, but we'll go ahead and just jump into the list.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we answered the first one again with integrating with DBT. Like Christoph mentioned, we currently don't, but we will reach out to try to get some more information if that's something that's important to you on that. The next question is regarding a SQL database in Fabric, and if you can utilize the Xtract Universal tool to send it to a SQL server destination into a Fabric SQL database.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're already supporting Azure SQL, and in Fabric, a SQL database will have a similar endpoint and authentication mechanism. So that is also an option to support the load into that SQL database directly with our tool.
Okay, great. And so the next question, we did, or you did touch on this a little bit during the demo, Christoph, about Xtract Universal being a more of a push and examples of how to automate. But maybe if you want to just expand on that to this specific question that is that was posed here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with OneLake and really most of our data platform destinations, it's typically a push model, meaning the process starts in our tool or on the SAP side, and then the data is pushed into that target environment when it's ready and when it's been extracted. We have some pull destinations as well, so both mechanisms can actually be supported in our tool. Typically, we support the pull model when it's more of an end user type tool. For instance, with our direct integration into Power BI through the Power BI connector, there we support a pull model that also includes the Power BI data set that can be refreshed periodically. So for OneLake, to summarize, for OneLake, it's a push. For other destinations, like going directly to Power BI and a Power BI data set, it would be a pull mechanism. And you could use any type of automation tool. You can use Azure Batch to call our CLI. We have that documented also on our website, how to do that. You could also just use any tool that can call a REST endpoint or a web service endpoint. So we give you the URL that you can use to just kick off the data extract. And our customers use all kinds of different tools. We have customers that use other ETL tools or Airflow or PowerShell scripts. So we also have a full set of documentation on this for how to do it. It's very flexible. It basically comes down to two ways. One is either to call the CLI, the command line interface, or call the URL to kick off a data extract. And then you also have the capabilities to monitor. So is it still running? Was it successful? Has it errored? You have access to the logs. So you can build out a full monitoring through that.
Okay, great. Let's see, the next question is about, will Sybase be offered for CDC in the future?
Yeah, so just to clarify here, we operate with SAP on an application level, but there are some differences in terms of the underlying database. We do have Sybase on the roadmap. It's a little bit out still, a few months, but we do have plans to also support customers that run SAP on Sybase. At the moment, we support SQL Server, Oracle, as well as DB2.
Okay, great. The next question, there's a question here about, oh, sorry.
And HANA, of course. Yeah, and HANA, of course. I missed that, yeah.
Yeah, so there is a question in here about training or classes. So on our tool side, on our product endpoint, generally speaking, and hopefully you saw this in the demo, we aim to make the tool as really intuitive and easy to use as possible. So generally when our customers start an evaluation, we provide work sessions, working sessions, answering questions during that evaluation process that most of the time will, get them trained and familiar enough with the product to go into production. In some cases, if there are, say, really advanced use cases or scenarios, then we can provide training upon request. But again, with our tools, since our aim is to make it very easy to use and intuitive, generally it's not necessary. Adding to that, also, if you do have any questions that would pop up once you're in production, we do have a very good support team. We have very good online documentation that will generally solve any questions or problems that pop up. Okay. Next question is asking about lag time from SAP into OneLake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so one of the advantages of OneLake being a lakehouse architecture or data lake architecture is that the load into that environment is actually very fast. Yeah, it's faster than, for example, loading into a database where more validation of the data usually happens. So if I just on my screen here go back to the customer load that I showed you in the demo, that was just over 10,000 records. And in the log, I can see that about 8 seconds of that 10 seconds was spent in SAP extracting the data. And then the remaining 2 seconds is what it took to store that data in the OneLake environment. So also based on our experience with Azure storage or similar environments, S3, that's typically very fast to store even large files with millions of records in those environments, because it's just just a file, and it doesn't have to go through, initially at least, a lot of validations.
Okay, great. And then the next question asks about Databricks, and if we have plans to integrate a Databricks catalog tables as a destination.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so not directly the Unity catalog tables. We support Databricks currently in the form of transferring the data to the Databricks stage. So if you're using a data stage, whether that's Azure Storage or AWS S3, we can do that, but not directly into the tables. We're looking at that, however, in a similar way. We're looking at BigQuery. As you saw with OneLake, it's similar. To get the data into the Delta tables, there's usually another process involved, and that's often easier done on the target side. But we're looking at ways to make that easier for our customers.
Okay. Okay, and then so the next question is about regarding the Microsoft environment, and what they're trying to bring natively to the customers. How would that compare to what we're doing with XU versus what you might be able to do or not be able to do natively from the Microsoft environment?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course, Microsoft also has tools to replicate data, including some SAP data connectors. I believe, and I hope you saw in the demo, that with our tool, we provide a very simple but very efficient and performant solution. We have more connectors. We have a very broad range of SAP systems that we cover, and different source connection types. I think we have a unique solution for table CDC, one that, for example, you wouldn't find in Data Factory. Same for reporting. Lots of customers want to replicate report data. So I think we have the broader feature set, and I think also the ease of use is something that typically resonates with a lot of customers. And we also have customers that utilize Fabric or Microsoft services, but they might also have other needs. And that's where we also work quite well with other environments.
Okay. Yeah, so the next question again, as we mentioned during the intro and the demo, so what you saw with Xtract Universal, it's not a full ETL platform. And so if you do need to do transforms to the data, what are some of the best practices, whether you can do that directly from Fabric, another prep tool like Alteryx. I mean, the solution we have is, as Christoph showed in the beginning, can send to multiple environments. But Christoph, what do you think would be the best practice if you needed to do translations getting into OneLake?
Yeah, I think that probably depends a bit on your use case. We're also an Alteryx partner, so we know their tools quite well, and they have powerful tools to transform data, to do all kinds of analytics, spatial analytics, AI type workloads. So that's a compelling tool set. In the same way, there's basic transformations you can also do in Power Query, before you load the data into Power BI. So I would say it really depends on your use case. Both tools have their place and advantages, yeah, depending on your use case, it really depends on what makes the most sense for you.
Okay, great. Yeah, so the next question has to do more with the table structure, and how the table structure would interact between the SAP metadata and the table in Fabric. with our tools.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, does the relational model in Fabric benefit automatically from SAP metadata? Yeah, so for example, table column relationships. So not at the moment. So while we do have some understanding of how tables in SAP are related, for example, if you join tables in our table component, we will do an auto join based on our understanding of the tables and their metadata. But we don't really send that into an outside environment like OneLake. So when you create the schema, or the semantic model as it's called in Fabric, you won't automatically have those relationships between your SAP data.
Okay. Okay, and then the next couple of questions are related to specifically for change data capture, asking about system performance for large deltas. This question is specifically comparing to a different tool of ours, Xtract IS.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe if you can just touch on system performance, especially for large delta pools.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we see pretty good numbers there. Also, what we're hearing from customers, as your delta volume goes up, it takes a little bit longer for that delta to process. That's just part of it. But you also have to compare it to the load or the burden on your SAP system if you wouldn't have delta. And that load is a lot larger than the load that the CDC functionality adds to the system. And our general recommendation is also, when you're dealing with large amounts of delta records, run as often as you can. And so run maybe every 5 minutes or every 10 minutes to keep that delta set small. In that way, you can limit the time that it takes to extract the delta, and you should see a better performance. We've also done some fine-tuning with our table read function module to make sure that that really performs well. Yeah.
Okay, and then there's a follow-up to that, if CDC will be supported on S/4HANA in-memory database.
No plans at the moment for that. I'm not sure if that's doable, so we haven't looked at that. But also happy to talk more about this with you. If you have specific requirements or interest in specific functionality, we're happy to follow up with you. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then so the last question is, it's product specific to using variables in Xtract Universal, and the question is getting more instruction information on how to do that. So we'll send. We do have this documented, and we'll send how to do it. But we're also happy to create little product video snippets that we can post up as well. So we're happy to do that, and we can follow up directly after this.
Mm-hmm. Yes, happy to do that. Yeah.
Okay. So at the moment, that is all of the questions that we have in the Q&A area. If anybody here has any last minute questions you'd like to answer, please feel free to post those now. Otherwise, for those of you who attended, we will be, and also for those who didn't make it, we'll be sending this recording so you can see the recording again if you wanted to go through any parts that we saw. Or again, if you scan this QR code and if you have some questions where you'd like maybe more one-on-one or consultative conversation with us, please feel free to scan that, and you'll see a link to contact us from our website. And then either myself and or Christoph will follow up with you directly. Okay, so yeah, I see the questions have slowed down. So I think with that, we'll go ahead and end the webinar. We'd like to thank you, everyone who was attending, who has attended. We really appreciate your time and hope this topic was interesting for you and that you learned a little bit about our solutions today.
Thank you as well. I appreciate your time, and feel free to contact us for any additional questions that you might have. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Goodbye.